I was rushed to the hospital unconscious. My son's shocking response left me heartbroken. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. One moment, I was laughing at my son's corny jokes, and the next, darkness swallowed me whole. It was a normal Tuesday morning, or so I thought. The sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, warm and inviting, as I poured my coffee. Little did I know it would be my last sip for a while. Suddenly, sharp pain twisted in my chest. It sucked the air right out of me. I gasped, my hands trembling as I clutched the table, feeling it splinter under my grip. The world blurred, colors swirling like a dirty dream. My heart raced. Each beat echoed loud in my ears, and then silence. I woke up in a cold, sterile room, the beeping machines pricking at my awareness. Pain throbbed through my head. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled my nostrils. My heart sank. I was in a hospital. I shifted my gaze, trying to find familiar faces. That's when I saw him, my son, Ethan. His eyes, usually so bright, were clouded with confusion and fear. "Mom," he cried, his voice thick and strained, sending a jolt through my chest. But instead of rushing to my side or embracing me, he stepped back, eyes wide, as if I were a ghost. Why wasn't he running to me? Why did he look at me like that? Ethan was my anchor. My sweet boy had always been filled with joy and laughter, but at that moment, he was lost. I reached out, my fingers trembling, wanting to pull him close. But he only blinked, tears cascading down his cheeks, and a strangled whisper slipped from his lips. "You scared me." Fear wrapped around my heart like a vice. This wasn't the reunion I imagined. Suddenly, the hospital walls felt like a cage. I looked closer at him, searching for something: reassurance, love, a hint of the boy I knew. Instead, all I found was a mystery in his expression. Why was he scared? What had happened in those moments I'd lost? A nurse rushed in with papers, the sound of her footsteps echoing like a countdown. My mind raced. Did he blame me? Did he think I wasn't coming back? I struggled to sit up, to bridge the chasm that had formed between us. "Ethan," but before I could finish, the lights flickered, and an anxious tension filled the air. Outside, I heard whispers, people murmuring, exchanging glances. There was something in the atmosphere, something I couldn't quite grasp. In that charged silence, my heart thudded against my ribs. What had I missed? How long had I been gone? And why was my son looking at me like that? I could feel the edges of the room closing in. How had one moment turned into this? I was desperate for answers, yet the shock in his eyes filled me with dread. What was really happening? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days blurred into one unrelenting haze of white walls and hard beds. Each time I regained consciousness, I was met not just by my own fear, but by the lingering darkness in Ethan's eyes. Those first few days were agonizing, each moment stretching like an endless road, filled with questions that hung in the air like the stale scent of disinfectant. Ethan visited me every day, but every time he entered, it felt like I was seeing a stranger. He would sit by my side, head bowed, staring at the floor, avoiding my gaze as if I were made of glass. I longed to reach out, to remind him of our shared softness, the laughter at the kitchen table, our shared movie nights, the silly songs he belled out when he thought no one was listening. But all he offered were scattered words about school and friends, small talk that felt more like a barrier than a bridge. One particularly gray afternoon, my heart heavy with unspoken words, the nurse arrived to check my vitals. "You're stable, but the doctors want to keep you here a bit longer for observation," she said. I could hear the dread creeping into her voice, a warning that made my heart race. Ethan's face paled. "How long, Mom?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. I wanted to reassure him, to tell him everything would be all right, that I would be out soon, and we would go back to our normal. But deep down, I felt the fear twisting in my own gut. How could I ease his anxiety? "Just a few more days, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile that felt foreign on my lips. But the smile only lasted for a heartbeat before it crumbled under the weight of uncertainty. As the days crawled forward, trying to communicate my love and care became my daily battle. One evening, I overheard Ethan with a doctor outside my room. "Is she going to be okay?" His voice trembled with raw emotion. The doctor's words drifted into the room, soft yet brittle, like a cracked porcelain. "We're doing everything we can." But the rest dissolved into a murmur, uncertainty threading through each syllable. My stomach twisted, the dread spiraled further, sinking its claws into my chest. After that moment, things began to shift. One of the hospital's social workers introduced herself and offered to sit down with Ethan. She was kind, her voice smooth like the gentle rush of a stream, and I could see his rigid demeanor thaw just a bit. As they talked, I watched from my bed, yearning to dive into their conversation, to be part of the world outside that hospital room. Days passed, and Ethan started to open up a little. He would bring me books to read, old favorites and new ones he thought I'd enjoy. One afternoon, as he settled into the chair beside me, he held out a well-worn copy of The Little Prince. "Remember this?" he asked, a flicker of warmth lighting up his features. "Yes," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "We used to read this together every night." "I remember," he murmured, almost to himself, and for a fleeting moment, the walls around him lifted, revealing a shadow of joy that had been hiding for too long. But that little spark of connection was short-lived. In the darkness of night, I often lay awake, dissecting every moment, their implications folding into my heart with each passing minute. I could sense that something deeper than pain was weaving through our lives, a chasm we could neither voice nor bridge. Then, on a night heavy with storm clouds and echoes of thunder, I overheard another conversation, this time between the doctors. "I'm concerned about the patient's recovery. We need to consider that her condition could worsen," one said, their voice clipped and urgent. Ice gripped my heart as the implications wrapped themselves around me like a thick fog. What was happening? Could I really be slipping away from Ethan? In that moment, I resolved to fight with every ounce of my being, not just for me, but for us. The dawn cracked through the gray clouds outside. I turned my gaze to Ethan, who was dozily curled up in the chair, the worry lines on his young face etched deeper by sleepless nights. Pressing my hand against the cold sheets, I whispered, "Ethan, I'm not going anywhere, I promise." But just as he stirred, a commotion erupted outside my door. Voices rose, frantic and loud, drawing my attention. I sat up, urgency coursing through me, ready to fight for clarity. "What is happening?" I called out, fear gripping my heart once more. In the ensuing chaos, as the door burst open, a familiar face stepped in, a face I never expected to see again. It was Martin, my estranged brother, the one person I had hoped to keep at bay from my life. My breath caught in my throat. What was he doing here? And had they brought him to me because things had worsened? Ethan's eyes darted between us, shock etching deeper lines on his face as he realized the gravity of the moment. What was about to unfold, what bonds would be tested, what truths would come to light hung in the air, making it unbearably thick. Nothing would ever be the same after this. The storm outside matched the turmoil inside me, each crash of thunder resonating like the pounding of my heart as Martin stood at the threshold of my room, his expression unreadable, a mask of unmet expectations and unspoken grievances. I felt as if the air had been sucked from the room, leaving me gasping for clarity, for understanding of his sudden presence in this fraught moment. "Evelyn," he said, voice low and hesitant, as though testing the waters of old wounds now freshly opened. I heard you were in the hospital." The silence stretched taut like a wire, snapping back into place only when Ethan stirred awake, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. The confusion written across his face was a mirror of my own tumultuous thoughts. "Who is he, Mom?" he asked, still groggy but alert, his eyes darting between Martin and me. The innocence in his voice was like a sharp blade, cutting through the tension and redirecting my focus. "Ethan, this is your uncle," I managed, the words feeling foreign on my tongue, worn and frayed from disuse. My brother looked at Ethan, a curious blend of regret and affection flitting across his features. "Hey there, buddy," he said softly, pulling his hands from the pockets of his jacket as if to be less imposing. There was a flicker of something behind those guarded eyes, perhaps the hint of hope. Ethan remained wary, his tiny body tense in the chair as he peered up at me for reassurance. I wanted to wrap him in love, to shield him from the complexities of family histories and resentment that lingered like smoke. "You don't have to talk to him if you don't want to," I whispered, desperation lacing my tone. The room filled with the sound of regretful breaths. Martin shifted uneasily, as if realizing just how fragile this moment was. "I'm not here to make things more complicated," he said, his voice cracking. "I came to see you, Evelyn. I've missed too much." "Missed too much?" I echoed, feeling anger flare in my chest. "You made your choices, Martin. I can't just brush over that." Ethan stood up as though compelled by an unseen force, a bewildered expression on his face. "I don't like this, I don't understand," he murmured, his small voice echoing with hurt. His innocence, his blunt honesty, uncovered the raw wound between us, a wound I had thought healed over, but had only festered under the surface. "Ethan, I need you to," I began, but the warmth of his presence felt like sand slipping through my fingers, and I watched, helplessly, as he took a step toward the door, uncertainty etching deeper lines on his young face. "Wait," Martin called, desperation leaking through his typically stoic demeanor. "Please, let me talk to you both. There are things I need to explain, things you deserve to know." My heart raced as I met his pleading gaze. For years, I had cloaked myself in a shroud of disdain for my brother, convinced that his return would only unleash a torrent of pain. But what if his presence, unexpected and uninvited as it was, could provide Ethan with an additional thread of support? I cast a glance toward Ethan, who stood rooted to the spot, wide-eyed and uncertain. "Just a moment, Ethan," I said gently, hoping to coax him back. I felt a sense of responsibility not just to Martin, but to the fragile bond forming between my son and this man I had long kept at bay. Ethan slowly returned to his seat, but his brows remained knitted with confusion. "Whatever you have to say, can it help my mom?" he asked, his voice trembling but firm, as if he was stepping into a role that he wasn't sure he was ready for. "Martin," I urged, my voice tinged with a mix of pleading and accusation. "If you're here to open old wounds, I don't think now is the time." "No," he responded quickly, but his expression was clouded, and I could see the flash of panic flare in his eyes. "I don't want to relive the past. I want to help. I'm scared too." Scared, the word hung in the air like an uninvited guest. We were all scared, in different ways, driven by fear of the unknown, of loss. "I thought I lost you once," he continued, quiet intensity in his words, "and I'm not ready to lose you again. I've had time to reflect, Evelyn, to understand what I could have done differently." And here it was, a crack in his carefully maintained stoicism, a glimpse of a brother I used to know before life had torn us apart. I could see the vulnerability behind the hardened shell. There was a flicker of hope in Martin's eyes, too a dangerous thing to embrace. But just as I was about to delve deeper into our shared past, something in Ethan's expression made me pause, my heart tightening. He looked at me, his eyes fierce with a question I wasn't ready to face. "Are we going to be okay?" The storm clouds rolled outside, mirroring the brewing tempest inside me. My heart seized. I wished I could promise him everything would be all right, but the truth was still tangled in the web of uncertainty that held us prisoner. The sudden beeping from the medical equipment pierced the silence, a stark reminder of the danger looming over us. My eyes darted to the monitors, and I felt a wave of dread sweeping over me. "Ethan," I began, trying to reach out for my son, all sense of direction lost. But before the words could form, a nurse rushed into the room, urgency etched across her face. "Something's wrong," she gasped, and in that moment, the fragile threads of connection, the new opportunities for healing, were torn away as chaos unfolded, and the reality of my situation exploded into stark clarity once more. That I watched as the nurse's hands moved swiftly, an array of sounds crescendoing around me, drowning out the voices and the emotions that had been so close to unfolding. I felt myself being pulled underwater, helpless, eyes wide open, with Ethan's terrified gaze pinned to mine, a world of fear churning in the depths. And as the storm breached the skies outside, threatening to obliterate everything in its path, I realized that the questions we faced about family, love, and survival were only just beginning to unravel. The beeping escalated, the sound piercing my fog of confusion and amplifying the dread curling in my stomach. The nurse's face was a mask of urgency, her hands deftly working to stabilize the equipment while her eyes flickered with barely concealed fear. I felt the room contract, shadows stretching at the edges as light and sound warped in a dizzying whirl. "Evelyn, focus on me," the nurse was saying. "We have to get you stabilized. Can you hear me?" I nodded, but my heart wasn't listening. My mind was reeling with the fear that had been waiting just below the surface. The chaos seemed to envelop Ethan, shrouding him in confusion, a small boy caught in a torrent of emotions he shouldn't have to carry. I reached out for him, but my hand faltered as the nurse deliberately shifted her attention to the equipment. I felt a desperate need to shield him. His innocence must be preserved amid this storm of adult complexities. "Ethan, it's okay. I'm okay," I managed to call out, even as the brunt of the nurse's focus turned toward me. He met my gaze with wide, frightened eyes, his little hands clenching the armrests of his chair like they were lifelines in a sea of turmoil. "Mom," he cried, and that single, desperate plea tore through me. The thought of him witnessing my breakdown caused panic to claw at my throat. "Everything is going to be okay, I promise." But as those words escaped my lips, they felt hollow, and Martin's uncomprehending gaze chilled me. I could see the worry etching deep lines into his expression, filled with guilt and regret, leaving me feeling even more fractured than before. The nurse's determined efforts heightened my awareness of the fragility of our collective strength. The hope that knotted itself within me was quickly unraveling. "Stay with me, Evelyn," she urged again, her voice a lifeline while I was drowning in unknown depths. And then it came, a small voice, steady yet trembling, breaking the chaos like a beacon. "Please, I want my mom to be okay." Ethan's plea hung in the air, a raw line drawn in the sand, before the racing hearts of the adults who had complicated his young life. In that moment, Martin stepped closer, the urgency snapping something in him, a shift toward responsibility I had long hoped for, but feared would never come. "Evelyn," he began, his voice stronger yet tinged with sorrow, but the words spilled like a flood as I felt myself slipping away at a chaos of emotions and sounds merged together, wires bustling, voices blending into a distant hum, all while Ethan's small figure began to dissolve into a blur before my eyes. Hope and despair collided violently, and as he stared at me, my heart felt splintered. I wished desperately to soothe his fears, but how could I when fear was the only thing anchoring me to the moment? "Oh God, please, don't leave us," I choked out, my heart racing as the reality crashed upon me like a wave. I could see the flicker of anguish cross Martin's features, and for just a glimpse, a shared pain bloomed between us, the weight of unspoken memories tethering us together even in this tempest of sorrow. Suddenly, the equipment beeped erratically, flashing alarms that felt like an unwanted siren heralding the end. An imposing wave of dread washed over me, realization piercing through like a knife. The storm outside wasn't the only tempest raging here. The nurse finally turned her focus to Martin, her voice steady yet coated with compassion. "Sir, I need you to step out for a moment. We're going to need to stabilize her condition." "Wait," he called out, panic flashing in his eyes. He looked at me, desperation clawing at his voice. "I can't leave her, Evelyn, please. Hang on, okay? Just a little longer." And as they took Martin aside, my trembling heart faltered at the silence that slipped into the room. Ethan was left stranded in his confusion, eyes filling with tears that mirrored my own fears. With a sudden rush, my heart twisted with a sharp desire to push through this pain, to reach for my son, to envelop him in the love we both so desperately needed, but also knowing that the shadows lurking behind this storm still held secrets I had buried. "Ethan," I whispered, my voice raw and breaking. "Stay with me, love. Just breathe with me." He took a few shaky breaths, his little body trembling as he leaned forward, forcing himself to be brave. "Mom, I'm right here," I said, and I fought to maintain a grip on reality, focusing on the soft waves of his presence. His warm little fingers found mine, and despite the chaos swirling around us, my heart glimmered with a hope that somehow we could face this together. But just then, behind the chaos of the nurses and muffled voices, a familiar figure appeared in the doorframe. Claire. I squinted through the confusion, half expecting her determined smile to light the room, Yet the look on her face was far from the warmth I'd always known. There was urgency, and something beyond worry clouded her features. "Evelyn," she started, but I could barely hear her over the tumult drowning out my thoughts. And then Martin's voice, strained and desperate, reached me. "Is she going to be okay?" The storm outside raged, relentless and unforgiving, a mirror of the turmoil inside me. My gaze shifted between Ethan, his little hand grasping mine like a lifeline, and Claire, who had taken a step inwards, words on her lips that I couldn't decipher. As the storm that raged inside morphed into something more insidious, I felt myself unraveling, caught between desperate hope and paralyzing fear. What was she about to say? The grip of tension tightened. The truth shone through a crack in the chaos, the promise of clarity not fully attainable until it was too late to turn back. My heart raced faster as I teetered on the edge of something monumental, poised to reveal a truth that could either stitch together our shattered lives or drive us further apart than ever before. The blaring alarms faded into an echo, becoming a distant hum as my awareness narrowed, tunneled down to Ethan and Claire. The heaviness in the room reigned over me, a specter of dread, stifling my breath. In that instant, I felt painfully aware of the ticking clock, each second a reminder of our tangled destinies. Claire's voice broke the silence, but it felt as warped as time itself. "Evelyn, please, I need you to listen to me." Her urgency urged me to seize her words, yet panic clouded each syllable, leaving me caught in a web of uncertainty. I turned my focus to Ethan, clinging to the warmth of his small hand. I could feel the weight of his trembling, a mirror to my own heart's frantic dance. "You're doing so good, baby. Just keep holding on," I urged softly, forcing every ounce of strength into my words to transmit the comfort he needed. "No, I want you to be okay," he cried, his voice breaking, cracking through my facade. The innocence in his plea shattered the fragile remnants of my composure. "Please, Mom." His fear echoed back to me, a relentless cycle that mirrored my own. As his eyes pooled with unshed tears, I felt time stretching, suspending the air around us. I would give anything to wrap myself around him, to swallow all his worries whole. "Ethan, listen to me," Claire said, her composure cracking. "You can't help her if you fall apart. I'm here, and I'm going to help. We're going to get through this, I promise." Her words were a lifeline, begging me to anchor myself amidst chaos. I caught the look on her face as she turned towards the door. The urgency, she conveyed something beyond mere caution. In that fleeting moment, it became all too clear. Something was wrong not just within the walls of this hospital, but perhaps deeper. Digging into the heart of our shared history, as the nurse re-entered, I pressed my eyes shut, wading through private fears. "I can't lose him," I thought, the thought slicing through me with icy precision. "Not like this." The silence stretched painfully, and I could sense the tension teetering on a knife's edge, waiting to tip over. I could hear Martin's voice in the background, firm yet laced with a faltering tone, the indistinct murmurs leaving the room heavy with his struggle. "Evelyn." Claire's plea pierced through the silence once more, drawing my gaze. There was something breaking in her eyes, a flicker of understanding that rippled beneath surface tension, urging honesty. "You need to know something, and you need to know now, before it's too late," she said, stepping closer, her attention shifting both to me and Ethan, the pull of a shared story tugging at us like a tether. "The reason I came here, it's about Martin. What had he done?" The question clawed at my insides, a bitter fruit waiting to fall from the tree of our tangled realities. My heart raced, each thud echoing the growing uncertainty threaded between us. "Martin?" I barely managed to breathe, the weight of his name suffocating me. "What about him?" But just then, the room quaked with the intrusion of a new sound, the unmistakable rush of hurried footsteps, the frantic bustle of hospital staff, circling around me like troubled bees as my thoughts spiraled out of control. "Evelyn," Claire pressed, the urgency in her expression sparking an electric tension in the air. "You have to know what's been happening." The door slammed shut where the chaos had rushed in, leaving behind a stony silence that swallowed Claire's words. Whispers from the nurses fluctuated, a murmur becoming a distant drone that echoed eerily in the back of my mind. "Mom, please." Ethan cried out again, clutching my hand tighter, as if hoping to pull me back from the brink. and I could feel the twisted knot of anxiety binding us together. My gaze was drawn back to Claire, the storm of urgency clawing at her throat as she struggled to keep her composure. "What is it?" I rasped, the question building in my throat as dread pooled in the pit of my stomach. "What about Martin?" In those few moments, it felt as though the very air around us shifted, an impending storm, a sweeping tide of secrets and unspoken truths ready to break. I held on to Ethan's little fingers, my heart fretting as Claire wrestled with her words, the panic and urgency swelling in the space between us, a dark omen foreshadowing that perhaps the worst storm was yet to come. And just like that, as uncertainty yawned wider, I felt the weight of dread settling permanently over our brittle lives. I was desperate for clarity, yet terrified of the mess we might unearth, caught between a yearning for the truth and the fear it could unravel the fragile tapestry holding us together. And just outside, thunder rumbled ominously, mixing perfectly with despair as hope flickered in the half-light, a whisper of kindness and light that seemed miles away, yet tantalizingly close, waiting for the courage to tether us back together. Before everything changed forever, time seemed to hang, suspended, as I gripped Ethan's hand, as if it were the lifeline tethering me to sanity. The whispers around us morphed into a muffled cacophony, the rhythm of fevered voices fading into an indistinct blur. I fixated on Claire, who was grappling with her words like a lifeguard trying to pull someone from the depths of a dark ocean. "Please, Claire," I begged, desperation streaking every syllable. "What I need to know." Her eyes darted between Ethan and me, as if assessing how to navigate the minefield of emotions surrounding us. Each breath I took felt heavier, the atmosphere laden with a tension that threatened to snap. "Evelyn, Martin is in trouble," she finally choked out, her voice barely rising above the ambient sounds. "Real trouble. I didn't know how to tell you, but you deserve to understand." The statement echoed deep within me, setting off a cascade of responses. A single word rang out louder than the rest: trouble. The space between us contorted with unyielding anxiety, yanked tight, yet ready to fracture under scrutiny. "What kind of trouble?" I pressed, unwilling to back down from the question that clawed at my ribs, drawing blood with its tenacity. "What has he done?" Claire hesitated, trembling on the precipice of revelation. "Yes, involved with some people who don't play by the rules, people who could hurt you, could hurt us all," she confessed, the corners of her voice fraying. A wave of cold washed over me, wrapping itself around my heart. The icy grip sent shivers racing down my spine. Images of our lives flooded my mind, happy moments, laughter floating through the air, each memory now tainted with shadowy doubts about the man I had shared my life with. Ethan drew in a shaky breath, his little body quivering beside me. "Mom, is he going to be okay?" he asked, his innocence a stark contrast to the chaos closing in. I swallowed hard, fighting the knot tightening in my throat. "I don't know, baby," I managed, struggling to maintain my composure for Ethan's sake. I felt his grip loosening slightly, a sign of fragile hope wavering under fear's weight. Suddenly, the door burst open once more, and a new nurse entered, a tall woman with an air of quiet strength. There was reassurance woven into her presence, a flicker of kindness that didn't quite extinguish the apprehension swirling like a tempest around us. "What is happening here?" she inquired gently, her gaze moving between the three of us, a subtle attempt to assess both the physical and emotional states in the room. Claire's voice faltered beneath her watchful gaze, and I sensed the urgency of our situation gripping us all. "We need to know how Ethan is doing," I managed, the plea a low whisper. The nurse knelt beside Ethan, a soft smile breaking through the tension enveloping us. "Hey, buddy," she said, her warmth a balm against the chill of uncertainty. "You're so brave. Can you tell me where it hurts?" A moment passed before Ethan responded, his voice cracking with emotion. "My mom, I just want her to be okay." His gaze flicked to me, laden with a mix of concern and fear, spiraling deeper into the unknown. "We're all going to make sure she'll be okay," the nurse promised, her tone steadying like a steady flame in a gusty wind. She turned her focus to me, her eyes searching mine for any hint of reassurance. "We are not giving up on anyone here. You just need to take a deep breath. You're doing great." I nodded, but uncertainty gnawed at my insides, a pit of despair growing. Thoughts of Martin and his hidden depths churned in the recesses of my mind, tangled with fear for both Ethan and myself. Just as I attempted to draw in a comforting breath, Claire reached for my arm, her voice softening. "Evelyn, after all of this, you need to figure out how to protect yourself and Ethan from whatever is happening with Martin. We cannot let him take away any more of our peace." Her words hung in the air, echoing as a gentle nudge toward action, a reminder that I wasn't entirely powerless. However, the nagging question lingered, something sharper than even the fear that surrounded us. Did I still love him enough to fight for him? The ground beneath me felt like shifting sand. Hope and despair weaved together, leaving me unsure of my next step. What would it mean to lose him forever? Would I even want to fight for a man entangled in secrets that threatened to unravel our family? The air crackled with unspooled emotions, unsteady and raw. Ethan leaned into me, framing a moment of tender connection amid the weight of chaos. But as I stroked his hair, I felt a shifting inside me, unsettling and urgent, a prelude to something dark just around the corner, foreshadowing yet another revelation waiting to pounce. And then, just as Claire opened her mouth to speak again, the lights flickered, plunging us into momentary darkness before they blinked back on. A thunderous clash resonated outside, an ominous reminder of the storm brewing beyond the hospital walls, and I realized it mirrored the tempest within my own heart. "A storm is coming," I whispered, but this one felt different, less about weather, and more about decisions hanging in the air, electric and charged with the magnitude of everything still unsaid and unresolved. And then, before I could even grasp the full meaning of my own words, Claire's phone vibrated violently in her pocket. As she pulled it out, her eyes widened in disbelief, a storm of dread brewing there, ready to erupt in a flash. "Evelyn, you need to see this," she said, fingers trembling as she handed it to me, the screen glowing ominously under the fluorescent lights. A message, a revelation that could shatter the fragile semblance of what we thought we knew, awaited my reluctant acceptance. My heart raced, every instinct flaring as I reached for the phone, staring down at the screen as if it were a ticking bomb, ready to explode into the very heart of our lives. The screen illuminated a chilling text, each word sending tremors through my body. A picture of Martin, his usually warm smile now replaced by a wild, frantic expression. Below it, the words danced grotesquely, twisting meaning with every heartbeat. "You can't trust him, Evelyn. Meet us, or you may lose everything." Panic seized my chest, each inhale punctuated by a tightening band of dread. I looked around, at Claire, whose eyes brimmed with unanswered questions, and Ethan, blissfully unaware of the shadows gathering just outside our reach. My heart surged with a potent mix of fear and guilt. The very existence of this message screamed danger, its implications clawing at the edges of my resolve. "What is it?" Claire probed, her voice barely above a whisper, her eyes darting between the phone and my face that I struggled to find my words, the rhythm of my thoughts staccato and disjointed. It's a warning," I admitted, each word soaked in trepidation. "Someone knows something about Martin, something that could put us all in jeopardy." My voice hitched, the weight of the reality settling around me like a shroud. "They're telling me to meet them." "Meet them?" Claire echoed, her expression a whirlwind of alertness and concern. "Evelyn, you can't. This could be a trap." "I know," I replied, desperation clawing at my throat. "But if there's even a chance it leads to the truth, I can't just ignore it. I owe it to Martin, to us, to find out what is happening, how deep the danger runs." Ethan shifted beside me, his tiny frame steeped in an innocence I was desperately trying to protect. "Mom, please don't go anywhere else. I don't like it when you're gone," he said, voice trembling, a small hand gripping mine with fierce determination. The piercing worry etched across his face shattered something fragile within me. In that moment, I realized the monstrous depths of the dilemma I was facing. Could I risk my safety for the sake of answers that may only bring more complications? But the thought alone of Martin being harmed or tethered to something sinister set off alarm bells in my heart. "Ethan, sweetheart, I need you to trust me," I murmured, desperate to infuse my words with the love overflowing my heart. "Whatever happens, I will always come back to you. You are my first priority." In the distance, thunder rumbled, echoing the chaos within. I hadn't prepared myself for this moment, for the decision looming with a ferocity I hadn't expected. Just as Claire opened her mouth again, perhaps to voice her fears or implore me to reconsider, the nurse re-entered the room, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the rising tempest inside. "Evelyn, I just received an update. You might want to sit down. There's more news about your husband," she announced, her gaze steady but carrying a weight that suggested urgency. I felt Claire's hand on my back, steadying me as I stumbled through the waves of emotion crooning at me from every angle. I nodded at the nurse, managing to maintain composure, even as the ground beneath my feet felt increasingly unstable. Is he okay?" My voice barely traveled above a whisper. The nurse hesitated, her features taut with emotion. "He's stable for now, but he's being questioned regarding some serious allegations. We're doing everything we can, but you should prepare yourself for what this entails. There are people looking for answers and allegations." "What kind of allegations?" My heart raced, terror twisting inside me as the walls felt like they were closing in. The nurse opened her mouth, but Claire interjected, "I think you should leave this for another time. She needs to focus on Ethan right now. It's about connections he may have with some dangerous individuals," the nurse finally blurted, her eyes darting toward Ethan. "And those connections run deep. He may have placed you and your child in danger unknowingly. It's best if you stay close here for now." The words struck a match to the volatile mixture of anxiety and hopelessness simmering within me. Danger, his choices threatening to engulf us like wildfire. My breath quickened, and as I met the nurse's gaze, I could feel the impending shift in our lives casting a long, dark shadow. "Mom." Ethan tugged at my sleeve, his innocent voice rising above the loamy dread. "Are we in trouble?" The question stung. How do I explain this to him when I couldn't even grasp it myself? Instead of a rational answer, the only sound I could manage was a choked breath, my heart an echo chamber of guilt and anguish. Claire stepped in, kneeling down to Ethan's eye level, her voice gentle yet firm. "No, buddy, not if we stick together. Your mom is strong, and we're working to keep everyone safe, I promise." The calm in her tone washed over me like a much-needed tide, but it felt insubstantial against the tremors of uncertainty cascading through me. Just as I thought, I found a nest of solid ground, shaking from a different direction, pierced the air. A crash, followed by snippets of muffled shouting echoed from the hallway. Anxiety exploding like fireworks in my chest. "Stay here," I instructed quickly to Claire and Ethan as I rose, drawn toward the sounds, each footstep trembling with uncertainty. I was a moth drawn to a flickering flame, but this wasn't about personal courage anymore. It was about survival. I reached the door just before the shouting escalated into chaos, a skirmish, people falling hard against the walls, and the muffled cries woven with a rage I had yet to understand. That I stood frozen, completely enveloped in the moment, a witness to something irrevocable, poised at the edge of an abyss. And then, a figure emerged in the distorting chaos. A man, his face obscured but unmistakably familiar. My heart lurched, memories flooding back like a torrent. The gravity of the moment captivated me because there, standing amidst the storm, was Martin. The sight of Martin surged through me like a tidal wave, both exhilarating and terrifying. His disheveled hair, the frantic look in his eyes, and the way he stumbled into the chaos felt surreal, like watching a mirage dissolve and reform right before me. "Evelyn," he shouted, his voice cutting through the uproar, dragging my feet into motion. Adrenaline propelled me forward, the world around blurring into an indistinct murmur. "Evelyn, get back." His frantic plea ignited a flicker of instinctive fear in my chest, yet I was magnetically drawn to him. Just as I closed the distance, two security guards barreled forth, grasping his arms in a vice-like hold. His expression shifted from relief to desperation as he wrestled against their grip, a lost man trying to claw back to safety. My heart splintered at the sight, a visceral reminder that he might not be the man I thought I knew. "Let him go. You can't do this," I shouted, my voice cracking under the weight of my emotions. The guards exchanged glances, their grip unyielding, but the words seemed to ignite a flicker of hesitation. "Evelyn, listen to me." Martin strained against them, muscles taut with urgency. "I didn't do this. They're trying to set me up, I swear. You have to believe me." What was once a comforting familiarity felt shrouded in uncertainty. My heart wrestled with the notion of betrayal looming large. Thoughts scattered like leaves in the wind, but all I could think was that I had to hold on to the memories of laughter, of love that had felt timeless. Stop. Claire's voice broke through the haze, cutting through the chaos like a lifeline. She stepped forward, her own eyes pleading as she faced the guards. You can't just take him away without due process. He deserves to be heard. Martin's gaze darted between us, his own terror reflecting back at me. For all the strength she tried to lend, Claire's actions only emphasized my helplessness. I felt torn, like I was being stretched across an ever-deepening chasm. Evelyn, please. Just trust me. I never meant for any of this to happen. Whispers of doubt clawed at the edges of my loyalty, battling fiercely against my love for him. Then tell me what is going on, Martin. My voice cracked, amplifying the weight of my plea. You need to explain. I can't just, but as desperation mingled with restraint, voices around us crescendoed into a whirlwind, and I felt like I was drowning beneath the noise. Then I heard Ethan's voice pierce through it all, a small, wavering lilt like a melody of innocence amidst the discord. Dad. My body froze. I turned, dread pounding in my chest, to see him standing at the threshold of the chaos, wide-eyed and terrified, his tiny frame quaking with uncertainty. Dad. He called again, his voice trembling, tears glistening like diamonds in his young eyes. Ethan. I shouted, my heart frantically reaching out toward my son, but it felt tethered by the chaos surrounding me. Stay back. It's not safe. No. I want to see him. Ethan cried, his voice rising in pitch, igniting a primal fear within me. In that moment, he was no longer my little boy. He was a tiny warrior, ready to confront the world even when I felt like crumbling. Ethan, please. My voice barely reached him over the din, but his stubborn resolve mirrored my own. He took a step forward, the distance between us an expanse I felt ill-equipped to bridge. The sight of Martin's face crumpling in desperation clawed at the edges of my heart. Evelyn, you have to protect him. I can explain everything, I promise. His gaze flared with intensity, desperate to erase the divide between us and keep our son safe from the tumult roaring around us. But fear bubbled within me, her voice murky and laced with despair. Whom should I trust? Memories of laughter and shared dreams mixed with the chilling reality of betrayal. 1,000 potential outcomes swirled in my mind, but all that anchored me was Ethan's quivering demand for his father. I want you both. Ethan screamed, tears streaking down his cheeks, breaking something profound inside of me. That my decision hung like a pendulum, each side teetering between overwhelming love and gut-wrenching fear. I wanted to shield him from the dark truth, but I could feel it creeping in, like a shadow stretching deeper on our innocence. Suddenly, I noticed a small object glinting amidst the chaos, a discarded badge that had tumbled from one of the guards. In an instant, the weight of the world shifted. I could no longer hold my breath, trapped under the weight of what was hidden in the dark. Stop! I yelled, desperation lacing my voice. I'll go with him. Just let him see our son. The guards hesitated, confusion lacing their brows at my sudden decision. Time stretched like chewing gum, each second suspended in space as the world around me faded into a blurry backdrop. I could feel Martin's eyes on me, a mix of sorrow and hope churning behind their frantic depths. And then, just as the guards began to pull Martin closer, a loud crash erupted from down the hall, the sound echoing ominously as a figure stumbled into view, another man, just as familiar, with a sharp grin that felt like venom. Looks like you've found yourselves in quite the mess, he said, eyes narrowing on us in calculated amusement. And just when it was about to get interesting, my breath caught in my throat, dread flooding through me like ice water. The familiar face stirred something villainous within my heart, the one I believed Martin had left behind. Yet here it was, unfurling in a way I could never have foreseen. Let us mix things up a bit, shall we? He grinned, and with that, I realized my nightmare was only just commencing. The air thickened with tension, suffocating and unbearable, as the man stepped further into the chaotic scene. His presence jarred against the fabric of the moment, unraveling any vestiges of clarity I had clung to. Who are you? I managed to rasp, the question falling flat amongst the mounting uncertainty. Oh, Evelyn, don't pretend you don't remember me, he said, his voice slick with charm that felt like ice on my skin. I've been waiting for a reunion, but the circumstances could be better. Martin's been keeping so many secrets from you, he continued, eyes glimmering with mischief. Martin's face contorted with a mixture of anger and dread as he fought against the guards once more. Don't listen to him, Evelyn. He lying. The man interrupted, his laugh peeling back layers of dread to expose raw wounds. In this lovely little mess, the truth won't set you free. It'll bury you, along with all your precious little secrets. But don't worry, I'm here to help, if you're willing to hear me out. With every word that dripped from his mouth, I clenched the fabric of my shirt, my fingers digging deep to anchor me. Doubt danced in my veins, stoking the embers of fear simmering in my heart. Did he hold the key to understanding all that had transpired between Martin and me? Ethan, get behind me, I yelled, instinctively placing myself between my son and the men closing in around us. The sight of his small, trembling form only deepened my resolve. Yet I felt the tremors of panic dance on the edges of my composure. Ethan's small face contorted in confusion, seeking comfort and clarity amidst the storm. I want my dad, he cried, the innocence of his demand dragging a heavier weight into the room. Your dad is involved in something dangerous, something he hasn't told you. The man sneered, his voice honeyed and malicious. Perhaps a little truth would set everyone free, but it might break them instead. Choose wisely, Evelyn. Tears tightened in my throat as I glanced back at Martin, whose desperate eyes brimmed with urgency, pleading silently for my trust. With every flimsy reassurance he had previously given me faltering in the heat of this revelation, how could I hold on to the thread of belief that had once tethered my heart to his? Claire stood a few feet away, her face a tapestry of determination and fear. You can't let him manipulate you, Evelyn. He thrives on chaos. Taking a deep breath to steady myself, I felt the tremor of determination surge through me. Martin, please, I need to know the truth. Are you involved in something I don't understand? Tell me now. The world around us quieted momentarily, suspended in the gravity of the truth waiting to be unveiled. I could feel all eyes on Martin, including Ethan S., and I hated the weight of the decision in that moment, the burden of trust fraying at the hem as time slipped painfully like sand through my fingertips. Evelyn, I promise tell me. I pleaded, my voice breaking. An emotional tempest surged within me, swirling memories of joyful moments I had with him, now tainted by the darkness looming over our lives. Yet before Martin could answer, the man interjected again, time's up. You can't afford to let him weave his story. The world is larger than you know, and Martin's been dancing on the edge of it for years. I want to allow you to use him as a pawn, Claire shouted, her face fierce in the face of the unexpected confrontation. You have no power here. Laughter sprung from the man's lips, a sound more sinister than lighthearted. Oh, but don't you see? The power is shifting. Before I could process his words, Claire lunged forward, her actions charged with defiance. As if to guard our fragile truths, she charged towards the man in an attempt to take control of the spiraling chaos. But in an instant, she was thrown back, colliding against the wall. Claire! I screamed, heart racing with horror. Ethan rushed to her side, concern etched upon his innocent expression. A small part of me felt galvanized by his bravery in that moment amidst the indivisible fear surrounding us. But dread lingered. Ethan should never have been caught in this chaotic web. Stay back, buddy, I warned desperately, choking on the fear that once again stoked the corners of my heart. What did you do to her? Martin's voice sliced through the air like a knife, a frantic outrage tinged with fear as he strained against the guards, fueled by a desperate need to protect us all. I did nothing she didn't deserve, Martin. You know as well as I do that your little charade cannot hold forever. And you? You're merely a shadow of the man I once know, he replied, voice teasing with malice. The clang of metal beneath Martin's struggle only amplified the uncertainty weaving through me. Just when I thought the thread of hope was beginning to fray under such pressure, a flicker of clarity glimmered in the back of my mind, a remembrance of an offhand comment about a hidden location Martin had made weeks before, a place we never talked about. Could that have been the key to everything happening now? Evelyn, Martin strained, his voice urgent as he glanced toward me. You have to stop. I interjected suddenly. A surge of bravery replaced the exhaustion within me, igniting a fire to confront the unspoken fears. You don't get to have this power over us. We're not your puppets. The man laughed again, a haunting sound that resonated painfully, laced with darkness. Then you'll all be swallowed whole. And just as I was ready to make a move, the overhead lights flickered ominously, plunging us briefly into darkness before exploding back to life. In that critical moment, shadows gathered in the corners of my mind, and before I could make sense of it, the sound of stretched rubber snapped, unexpected and sudden. Out of nowhere, a pitch-black figure surged into the scene, colliding with the man, a force of undeniable intensity that sent a ricochet of shock through the crowd. "Get away from my family," he bellowed, his voice standing firm against the tide of chaos. Recognition surged, my heart pounding as I struggled to comprehend the unexpected intervention. It was a figure from the past, a long-lost piece of a puzzle I never knew I had, who had come to our rescue. And what did their return mean for everything we held dear? As the commotion erupted anew, a new wave of uncertainty washed over us like a rogue tide, sweeping me further away from clarity and hope. All I felt was a fresh wellspring of fear and life-altering secrets threatening to break apart everything I believed, and my heart wrenched tight. A cacophony of conflicting emotions spiraling, hovering on the brink. All I could do was brace myself for the words that were yet to come, and the revelations still hidden in the dark. Time felt like quicksand, each moment stretching into eternity as I struggled to comprehend the scene unfolding before me. The familiar voice cut through the chaos like a beacon, anchoring me to a reality fraught with confusion. "Get away from my family." The visceral intensity of the declaration reverberated in my chest, a pull I didn't expect. I turned to see him, my estranged father, a figure I had long buried beneath layers of hurt and resentment. The wild look in his eyes mirrored my own chaos, yet stark determination fueled his every step toward us, a haunting remnant from years gone by. I felt the world tilt on its axis. His presence was a storm I hadn't been prepared for, but now stood irrevocably in front of me. "Dad," I breathed, disbelief washing over me like a cold wave. All the years of heartache and fragmented families crumbled beneath the weight of his unexpected emergence. My heart raced, a mix of fury and longing pulsing through my veins as he moved toward the man threatening our lives. "You?" The man in the chaos sneered, his once smug demeanor faltering momentarily as he registered my father's fierce resolve. "The past doesn't define us, but it sure as hell won't dictate our future," he roared, lunging toward the man, an act of reckless courage that sent shockwaves through the narrow corridor. Ethan stood frozen beside me, eyes wide, clearly grappling with the reality shifting around him. "Mom, who is that?" His small voice trembled, tethering me back to the present, back to the boy who needed me more than ever. My heart ached at the innocence in his question, the way he sought comfort in a maelstrom of chaotic truths. "His family, Ethan," I whispered, a sudden warmth stirring in my chest, a tether to a bond one thought irrevocably broken. My father's confrontation unfolded like a slow-moving train wreck. I could see the roles reversing, our lives spiraling toward an unforeseen climax. The man the threat sneered, "You think you're some sort of hero? You have no idea about the storm brewing." "Maybe," my father replied with rising intensity, "but you clearly underestimate the power of family." With every word exchanged, a flicker of resilience ignited within me, a surge of protective instinct radiating through my veins. My fears were no longer the chains that tethered me to despair. Rather, they were the foundation for the resolve that bubbled at the surface. "Evelyn, stay back." Martin's voice coughed out from the chaos again, and my gaze followed the direction of his desperate plea. The guards wrestled with him, yet his pleading eyes were more potent than heavy restraints. "I'm not the enemy here." Yet doubt still wormed into my heart as the swirling mists of confusion loomed. What if he was hiding the truth? A dark part of me wanted to shield Ethan from this tornado of reality, a truth that had now swept through every crevice of our lives, binding us in a web of terror and uncertainty that I felt the weight of silence draping over us like fog. As realization settled in, my father standing as guardian against this dark storm, but one question still echoed in my mind. What if he is wrong about Martin? What if I'm wrong about everything? Just then, with a desperate lunge, my father collided with the man, their bodies grappling in a fierce contest of strength and will. The commotion echoed through the hallway as I felt Ethan clutch my hand, grounding me just as the world around us threatened to tear at the seams. "Mom, what is happening?" His innocent query hit me like a lightning bolt of clarity, and I turned to him, fighting back my own trepidation. "It's going to be okay, sweet boy. Just stay close to me." But the apprehension lining his brow mirrored my fear no matter how hard I fought to shield him. The shadows of the past reached into our present. And as the surge of emotions flooded through, an instinct pushed me forward, away from the fray, where truths lay buried beneath the rubble of love gone awry. "Martin," I shouted, hoping to pierce through the noise, but uncertainty drifted thick. "You need to tell me everything. Now." The frenetic chaos spared me a sliver of clarity as he looked through the haze of desperation, the very truth I sought buried within those haunted eyes. "I didn't want this for you, for us. I can explain that's precisely what I want," I cried, taking a step forward, the weight of words heavier than each memory embedded in my heart. "I need to know if you're the man I thought you were." The commotion quieted momentarily, the air thick with our shared fears. Time slowed as if the world itself drew in a breath, and hope flickered like a candle in the dark. Each heartbeat echoed with agonizing anticipation. Would he grasp this moment or let it slip away? The light shifted as my father launched himself at the man, and just as I thought the tide would turn, a sudden flash of chaos erupted, guards fumbling as shouts filled the air. In that moment of turmoil, a realization dawned upon me, a collective strand coursing through this frantic spectacle. "We are not the sum of our past mistakes," I stated, my voice steady as I glanced at Ethan, then toward my father and Martin. "We are defined by what we choose to fight for." As if the clarity of my words settled like dust, the spiraling chaos began to quell, and amidst it all, Ethan's small hand tightened around mine. His faith in me, in the family we had yet to create, shone like a beacon, illuminating the path forward. "Look, I'm here, and I'll fight for our family," Martin asserted, though uncertainty marred his expression. "But I need you to trust me." My heart raced, fluctuating wildly between anger and yearning for the life we once shared. The ache of old wounds battled against a deep-seated desire for connection, for healing. "But what if you fail us again? Then I'll fight harder," he exploded, desperation glowing in his eyes, a truth waiting to be birthed. And somehow, in that fierce confrontation amid threats and whispered fears, I saw something flicker within Martin's gaze, a hint of the man I had once loved and a dwindling chance for redemption. The energy in the corridor shifted, and at that moment, I looked toward my father and felt the ground beneath us stabilize, the threads of loyalty weaving together where once there had only been fragments of heartache. This was our turning point, a chance to redefine our tangled fate, to mend ties stretched thin by the burdens we carried. "Ethan, it's okay. We can do this together," I whispered to him as I felt the rush of something warm building, the realization that the storm in our lives could turn into the very wind that propelled us forward. "Together," Ethan repeated, his voice small yet resolute, and my heart swelled with hope as I beheld the power of that simple word. The shadows loomed like specters, but hand in hand, as if reclaiming a forgotten legacy, we started to push through the weight of the turmoil enveloping us. I felt the swell of courage and love rising within me, a promise that no matter the past, we would find a way to rebuild, a way to rise above the darkness. Then, against all odds, those elements of betrayal and uncertainty began to shift. Branches once weighed down cracked open in sunlight. "Together," I echoed, our truth binding us, stitching back together the tattered fragments of our journey, and I began to believe, finally, that we could emerge from this night with a greater tenderness forged by love and choice. The storm would rage, but we would stand strong in its wake. And as we took our first step together into that uncertain light, I felt the flicker of hope lighting the way, a reminder that love, despite its scars, could still ignite a million new beginnings. In that moment, as darkness frayed around us, I caught Ethan's gaze, the innocence reflecting light amidst the chaos, holding tightly to the promise that no matter the trials ahead, We would always be tethered by the power of love, a love strong enough to weather the fiercest of storms. Together, I whispered one last time, my heart swelling with acceptance, for I knew now that love, no matter the obstacles, could heal even the deepest of wounds. And just like that, as we faded beneath the weight of uncertainty and hope blossomed anew. I felt destiny unfolding before us, a canvas painted with love and the promise of healing, a legacy we would forge together.